Hello, and welcome to another PC build. This time, we went big. I gave myself a $2,500 budget to try to put together something that was crazy. And this PC build, it didn't disappoint, but it ended up being a bit different than what I expected. I would assume I would end up with, like, say, a Titan X or at least a GTX 980 Ti, but I didn't. So stay tuned to see what I picked out. First, let's look at the case. I went with a Be Quiet Silent Base 800 ATX full tower case. I don't know why, but I think it's just something that I've always wanted to do, is build a really quiet PC. So I thought I'd start off with a case built around that idea. It's a nice case, plenty of expansions, and a lot of optimization towards how you can customize it, removing things, moving things around, that sort of thing. You can jam a micro ATX or ATX in this bad boy. All the fans have filters, and all of the filters are removable, a good feature. Moving on to the motherboard, I went with an ASRock X99 Extreme 4 LGA 2011 V3 Intel board. As you would expect with a newer board, it has a great amount of expandability with memory. Goes up to 128 gigabytes, which is far beyond what I think I would ever need. There are also 3 PCI Express 3.0 x 16 slots, something that could come in handy later on, say if I want to dump a bunch of money into graphics cards. Following the motherboard comes the big ticket item. Intel Core i7 5930K Haswell 6-core 3.5 GHz processor. This thing's badass. It's a bit expensive, but it is what we're looking for this kind of build. We're looking for something that is up there in price because it's a huge powerhouse when it comes to processing. It comes with everything you want to look for in a processor. Excellent reviews, good power consumption, not the best, but pretty good at 140 watts. It can be overclocked, which is another plus, since we will be liquid cooling this bad boy. Speaking of liquid cooling, we're going to go with the Corsair Hydro Series H105 Extreme Performance 240mm liquid cooling unit, or all-in-one pump and radiator combo. It's a good deal, and it should be able to handle all of the heat that we're going to be putting off our processor once we overclock it. Well, eventually we would overclock this, I would assume. It's 38mm thick, and other than the great reviews, we're going to move on to our hard drive. The Samsung 840 Pro. It's a great SSD. It's going to hold plenty of data, but we're really going to use this just as a boot drive. It's 128 gigs, so we're not going to jump in over our head and get a giant SSD. We're just going to stick with a slightly smaller one and use a larger hard drive to really stack all our files and games and all that kind of shit. Speaking of hard drive, we're going to go with the Seagate 4TB 64 megabyte cache. This is going to be kind of the dump everything into and let God sort it out kind of a thing. It isn't really special in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to move on to the RAM. G.Skill Ripjaws 5 series. 16 gigs times 2. So 32 gigs total. I don't think I'll ever really need more than that, even with video editing. I don't foresee pushing the 32 gig kind of barrier, per se. This particular model comes in silver, red, and blue, so I think that's pretty good. Reviews are good, and the timing is not bad either. Moving on from our RAM, we take a look at the EVGA Supernova. This is a platinum power supply, 850 watts. Fully modular, so if we don't need all the cords, we don't need to use them. It's going to be very efficient with our power, which we're going to need since we're not going to always be needing to tap in to all of the horsepower that's going to be underneath the hood. So when we're not doing some crazy gaming or editing, we don't need to be drawing a ton of power and wasting electricity or delivering more power than necessary to our components. We need to have something that's going to be pretty decent quality and something that's going to regulate power pretty well. And this guy looks like it's going to do it with the great reviews and the good parts and quality build. Last, but certainly not least, the graphics card. XFX R9 Fury X 4 gig liquid cooled. It is probably the better pick instead of going with like a GTX 980 Ti. They perform pretty similar. They aren't that far away from each other in terms of performance. But this guy will probably do better just because we can push it a lot harder and a lot longer because it is liquid cooled. I also think that with the liquid cooling setup, the all-in-one that's in there, we're going to have a little bit of a quieter situation here. So since this build is a bit different than where I thought it was going to be going, and it's ended up being a more of a quiet focused build, I think this is going to be the better choice. And our total comes to $2,300. So we're under by $200. So if we want to change something in this, we can add, say, a second SSD, and then we can have a RAID boot set up, so it'd be even faster. Or we can maybe add in another backup drive, or we could swap out our graphics card and switch it up a little bit and change things here and there. There's a little bit of a wiggle room. But in all, I'm pretty happy with this build, and I hope you are too. If you'd like to see anything different or have any advice or some kind of comment you want to give me, go ahead and do it. And thanks for watching. See you next time.